Friday webinar series. We have done more than 300 webinars so far, and we have been also very privileged under this series of Friday EGROW webinars series that we have had 6 Nobel laureates come under this series and speak to us under the G20 presidency of our own country. We did 3 special series, 11 on new international economic order, 6 on climate, and 6 on women empowerment. We've been covering contemporary issues, domestic and international, under this series. Under the term Trump and tariff, we have already done 6 webinars, and we are very fortunate to have the best speakers from across the world on Trump and tariff, so that nobody says that we have a biased view and only the Indian side of the view on Trump and tariff. During this journey that we undertook, there was something very unique that we learned. While we all Indians are keen to know what's happening and want to imitate what's London doing or Paris doing or New York doing or Sydney doing, we tend to forget how good and beautiful things Hyderabad or Bangalore, or for that matter, other parts of the country could be doing. So we started a special series learning from each other. And in that series of learning from each other, each of the states have been making presentation and sharing the highlights of their state growth story, things to learn from that state. There could be states which are not done well. Punjab is one such example. Highest per capita income in 2000, and within 25 years, we do not know, the free fall continues. So there must be a lesson to learn, things which we should not do, so that the collapse in growth rate does not happen at this pace. Right now, we're in the midst of that series. We noticed that an excellent book during this time has been published, The Silent Enemy. I come from the defense family. The think tank hosts many times defense experts. We talk about social security, talk of economic issues, monetary and fiscal, banking and financial sector, international trade. But is this security breached only by defense concerns, border issues, or there can be something silent within the economy, within the country, that needs to worry us? And this book, which we saw, Silent Enemy, written by a foreign sector civil servant, and then co-authored with a person who has done extensive work in different states and so knows the economy and the social fabric, we thought is very relevant. The book is extremely well written, goes in detail of things which we should worry about, and that's why we thought we will have 2 discussants, one a civil servant, an energy expert himself, well recognized, and another, an economist who's also very well recognized. So with this panel that we have, let me introduce you to the authors and speakers for the day today. And then I'll also briefly introduce you to the 2 discussants. Dr. Arvind Gupta, he is the author of the book and is speaking today. He is the director of Vivekananda International Foundation, a Delhi-based independent non-partisan think tank focused on research on foreign policy, defense, and security-related issues from an Indian perspective. He has been at very important places throughout his career, and he started, of course, his career from the foreign. He's a former diplomat. He has worked as a Deputy National Security Advisor, headed the National Security Council Secretariat in the Government of India. He was Director General of the Institute for Defense Studies and Analysis. He was Lal Bahadur Shastri Chair on National Security at the IDC. He is also an honorary professor in the Department of Defense and National Security Studies, Punjab University. His interests obviously are India's foreign policy, security, history, culture, and civilization. And his book reflects all these things. His co-author, Rajesh Singh, is an analyst on politics and public affairs. He's a regular contributor to media platforms such as Y News, Indus EGROW, and Mail Today. He also writes for the leading think tank, Vivekananda International Foundation, where he was a visiting fellow for a brief while. He had a 9-year stint with Delhi-based The Pioneer newspaper, where he served as Deputy National Bureau Chief and later as opinion editor. He also served, and this is important, so he gets a view of what's happening in the state and administration and governance. He also served as media advisor to Goa Chief Minister Manohar Parrikar in 2002 to 2003, during which period he was concurrently Director, Department of Information and Publicity, Government of Goa. To discuss the book, we have Mr. Ajay Shankar. He's from the Indian Administrative Service, has served at various places as Indian civil servants would do. He served as the Secretary of Department of Industrial Policy and Promotion. He joined the IAS in 73, retired of course in 2009, and he has worked in various capacities. More importantly, and one of the reasons why we wanted him here is because of his research and work on energy. Our second discussant for the day is Professor Deshpande, a dear friend and a colleague. He is a former director of Institute of Social and Economic Change, Institute for Social and Economic Change, Bangalore. He was formerly National Fellow ICSSR. He has played an important role in the Bangalore Dr. B.R. Ambedkar School of Economics. He has participated in various deliberations at the Planning Commission from 9th plan onwards, so thick into planning for a reasonably long time. He has authored 22 books, more than 125 research papers, recipient of many awards and gold medals. And we thought the issues that have been covered in the book are so extensive that he'll bring lots of value to the discussion. With that, I'm going to hand over the mic to Dr. Arvind Gupta to talk about his book, make us walk through it, and then we'll hand over to Mr. Rajesh Singh to tell us more about the book. And after they have finished, then we will go over to the two discussants. Over to you, sir, Dr. Arvind Gupta.
Most grateful to you, Dr. Charan Singh and EGROW and your colleagues here for asking me to share our views on our book and also the issues involved in our national security. Today, it's a great opportunity and honor to share this platform with you. And from the introduction that you gave, obviously we are in a very exalted company, and I want to thank you for that, and also appreciate the 300 plus webinars that you have done on issues of great importance, and also bringing together so many experts and people on this platform. Most grateful to you. Before I proceed, how many minutes would I have?
So we have in total 90 minutes, and therefore I was thinking we could easily have 30 to 40 minutes between you and Mr. Rajesh,
Okay.
and then we'll have 15 minutes each for the discussants, and then we'll open up for question answers because the issues are so wide that you have covered.
Yes.
That's the broad plan in my mind, but leave it to you, sir.
Thank you. I also want to thank the discussant, Shri Ajay Shankar, who is a renowned energy expert and a civil servant of great repute, whom I have the pleasure of knowing also, and Professor Deshpande, whom you have just introduced. It's really a wonderful experience being with you. So let me begin by just referring to what you said in the introduction. You talked about the state of Punjab. The state of Punjab, you said 2000, it had the highest per capita in the country, and today it's in free fall. Now, if you look at state of Punjab, it is one of the most important border states for India, and a lot of our national security issues are connected with our border states, including the state of Punjab. So you have Punjab, Pakistan bordering state, and you have Jammu and Kashmir. And you have this problem of free fall of GDP. And if you look at Punjab, it is facing so many problems. It's facing problems of economic growth, as you mentioned. It's also facing problem of drugs, very, very serious problem. It's also facing problems of migration. A lot of people go out of Punjab. It has faced the problems of terrorism in the past. Its politics is absolutely toxic. And it has an issue of cross-border smuggling and so many law and order issues. So Punjab is a typical example of a security concern for India. And all these security concerns are interlinked and interconnected. So Punjab is a very good example of the silent enemies which are at work and which are gnawing at our national security metrics. Of course, the military aspect of Punjab being a border state is very clear. We have had wars in the past and so on. But today, even when there is no war, we find that the Border Security Force, BSF, they are all the time worried about the drones will come across and they are dropping AK-47s, they're dropping the drug packets. The population is addicted to drug and so on. So that kind of, in a way, you gave a very good example, and I just picked up on that. And that is what this book, The Silent Enemy, is about. And Punjab is not the only state. There are many other places also where these issues are at work, both at the local levels, at the regional level, and also at the national level, and it also has international ramifications. So when we wrote this book, Rajesh Singh ji and I, this was on our mind that security is now becoming an increasingly broad concept. It is no longer just the military, the traditional aspects, but it is which other factors that you just mentioned. And this includes demography, climate change, economic security, environmental security, cyber security, technology, and many social aspects also. In other words, and you also mentioned in your introduction, of course, you mentioned climate change, and we have tried to say in this book that climate change has now direct national security impact. At the international level, you see, thanks to climate change, today we have the whole Arctic Sea, which is now melted in the summers. And by another 20, 30 years, the Arctic Sea, which was frozen for thousands of years, will be now free. And the melting of the Arctic Sea has completely changed the geopolitics of the Arctic region. And today, in fact, it has a huge implication for Indian foreign policy also. In fact, India is today looking at the possibilities of engaging with Russia and other Arctic states to identify possibilities of investments in the Arctic region in hydrocarbons and others. We have made some progress in that area. So how climate change is changing the geopolitics is one aspect. And climate change in Arctic, the Arctic is melting 3 times the average melting in the world. So it's melting very fast. Today it is Arctic politics. In a few years' time, perhaps in about 15 to 20 years' time, you might see the same kind of politics playing out in the Antarctica, which is the southern pole. Today, fortunately for a treaty which was signed way back in the 50s, Antarctica is not open for territorial possessions. Only it is allowed for scientific research. But the treaty will come up for renewal sometimes in, I think, in the 2040s. And then perhaps what happens, we do not know. So you can see how climate change is changing. And of course, climate change through weather systems, extreme weather events, through the cycles of droughts and floods, etc. We are seeing it all over the world. And a lot of changes are taking place in the production systems of various countries. It is now, we have mentioned it in the book, the number of conflicts which are taking place today in Africa, they can be related to prolonged droughts. And the prolonged droughts perhaps are the result of the climate change. That leads us to other issues like water. Water now, you know, has become a major issue between India and Pakistan. Indus Water Treaty. Now, earlier it was just a treaty, and the two countries were managing the management of the water sharing, which was provided for in the Indus Water Treaty. But now water has become a major source of tension between India and Pakistan. And water as a source of tension in other parts of the world is also documented very well. So climate change, water, extreme weather events, droughts, the food security, economic security, all these are linked. And earlier these issues were being talked about in a siloed fashion, maybe as economic issue, maybe as a social issue, maybe as a developmental issue. What we try to say in this book is that all of these have very serious national security implications. And today it is very important that our national security planners, who have been otherwise used to planning national security in military terms, they now should start looking at the non-traditional security issues and bring it in the national security planning. So that is the main message of this book, apart from the fact that we have tried to collect a lot of data and try to create awareness about each of these issues. In each of the chapters, there are chapters devoted to most of the major non-traditional security issues. In each of the chapters, we try and first give a global picture as to what is the global picture, collect some data, some arguments, the debate, etc. we collect. And then we look at the Indian situation. How does it translate to India? What is the situation, say, with respect to cybersecurity in India, or terrorism, or migration, or maritime security, or climate change, or demography? So we look at the Indian picture as well. And then we try to look at the identify direct or indirect pathways through which these issues are linking up to national security. So this is the format that we have followed in our various chapters. And I think Rajesh Singh ji will also talk about this in a while. Now, in the Indian context, National Security Council was set up in 1999 after a lot of debate of several years. And now we have had an experience of about 26 years of the functioning of the National Security Council system, of which National Security Council Secretariat, National Security Advisory Board, Strategic Policy Group, these are the parts of it. And of course, NSA is the fulcrum of now it was set up by an executive order. And the 99 executive order clearly mentioned that we should take a holistic approach to national security. So that was the first time in a formal document, national security was a holistic approach to national security was identified, in which things like migration, social cohesion, energy, health, etc., some of these issues were mentioned in that. Now, of course, 25 years down the line, when we are seeing glaciers are melting, when we are seeing extreme weather events are taking hold, when we are seeing demographies are changing, all these factors are happening. Now, I think it is high time that National Security Council should become a platform to bring these issues in a serious way in our national security planning. How they do it, etc., there are various ways of doing it. We have not gone too much into detail. But in the past, we have seen both in the National Security Council, particularly after the Kargil, there were group of ministers were set up. There was a Kargil Review Committee. It was followed by Naresh Chandra Committee on National Security, and there were several task forces were set up. So I think something similar we can today do, so that we can have a task forces on the non-traditional security issues, which give clear recommendations as to how non-traditional security issues should be brought on board in our national security metrics. So that is one major suggestion that we have made in this book. But that is not very easy to accomplish. First, we have to have a clear view of the scope of these challenges. That means a lot of research needs to be done, which has to be done perhaps outside the government, and a lot of data will have to be collected. And I think an awareness among the social scientists that these issues can have national security implications, and among the national security planners that they need to take on board the non-traditional security issues. So this kind of awareness also needs to be generated. And the silent enemy is a part of that exercise. Now, it's not that these issues have not been talked about earlier. In the think tank circuit, in strategic community, we have talked a lot about non-traditional security issues, etc. But where at least the literature survey that we did, there is not too much of literature where it all is brought together and a clear link to the national security is mentioned. So this, I hope that we have made some progress in that. Let me recall one episode way back in 2010. I was at the IDSA at that point of time, and we did a study at that time. That was the first study, I think, climate change and national security. And we interviewed a lot of people, we interacted with a lot of people, etc. And there was a lot of pushback. They said that please don't connect climate change with national security. At that time, in 2007, there was some kind of an informal debate at the UN Security Council that had happened on climate change and security, international security. A lot of people had made presentations there. Indian representative also had made. And that time we had opposed. We had said, no, climate change is climate change, national security is national security. We should not securitize the climate change and such issues. So there's been this feeling that if you securitize everything, information, education, water, health, this, that, etc., then the focus goes away from the core national security issues, which are the military issues, which I think has a merit. It's not that the argument has no merit. But the point is that climate change is not going to look at how you look at it, whether it has this argument has a merit or not. Climate change, etc. Now we have demonstrated in this book are having direct and indirect impact on national security, and you cannot simply hide behind the argument that we should not securitize these issues. These issues are getting securitized. You look at what happened in Bangladesh and Nepal, the regime changes that have taken place in these two countries just in the last 1 year. These has happened because all these issues were building up. The social issues were building up, climate change was building up, the migrations were happening, demography was changing. All these issues, the so-called the silent enemies, were at work there also. And that had a direct impact, that had ultimately all bubbled up to kind of regime changes that has taken place. And of course, the external powers also get involved in it. And for us now, both Bangladesh and Nepal are extremely important issues. And they have we have common borders with them, and we have a historic relationship with them. And what happens there will have a direct impact on the national security of the country. Look at what is happening in Myanmar or in Afghanistan. Myanmar, or even for that matter, Pakistan. Today, Pakistan is our major security challenge, but Pakistan also has a very serious climate change problem. So issues of climate refugees, etc., is all happening. And similarly, Sri Lanka and Maldives. Sri Lanka, they had an economic crisis, which is directly related to that, have a national security issue for us. If a country gets destabilized or becomes unstable in our own neighborhood for whatever reasons, it has a foreign policy impact and national security impact. Tibet is another issue. Tibet is a political issue, it's a military issue, and it's also a climate change issue. It's also related to the flow of waters from in the rivers through us. We cannot remain Indus Water Treaty, I did mention. So I think there is now a need to do focused studies, collect data related to science, related to policy, and then have a more holistic approach to national security. So this is broadly the argument that we have made in this book, and we'll be able to take some some issues in the Q&A. So I'll stop here. Thank you.
Over to you, Rajesh Singh ji.
Thank you, Dr. Charan Singh, for giving me this platform. And may I also congratulate you for the excellent work that EGROW has been doing. In fact, I have been visiting your website not only since the time you invited us, but even before, and have greatly benefited from the interactions and the kind of experts that you bring together. Enriches our understanding on various issues, although you focus more on trade and policy and economics, but I see that it has a wide variety of subjects that you discuss. Now coming to this this book, The Silent Enemy: Non-Traditional Challenges to National Security, we have, Dr. Gupta and I have identified actually 15 non-conventional factors that impact national security. This is by no means an exhaustive list. There may be more that we have not dealt with, but these 15 are very important ones. And I should say that they have been subjects of discussion off and on in the media and on various other platforms. Now, the book, as Dr. Gupta has already said, seeks to interlink these 15 factors and national security and how they directly impact. Those various reasons why the impact is there is also there in the book. But there is something that I want to, taking this narrative forward. One of the reasons why these factors have such a direct impact on national security is that each one of these challenges that we have discussed have the potential to be weaponized or have already been weaponized in many cases. Now, the weaponization of these factors adds another layer to the challenge that our national security faces. Now, we do not have the time to discuss each of these 15 factors and the weaponization that happens. So, what I will do is I will just list out a few of these factors that we have discussed and how they have been weaponized. Now, let us begin with climate change. I have some material with me here. Uh, Now, we've talked about climate change as as impacting security in the sense that climate change affects land terrain, the movement of our armed forces, it affects oceans, water, the movement of our fleet of vehicles, etc., and various other ways that even Dr. Gupta talked about. But the manipulation of climate change or the weaponization of climate change is also a major security issue. Uh, in 2024, Defense Minister Rajnath Singh obliquely referred to this in one of his addresses at an event, and he said that climate change in the country is not just a weather related issue but a national security issue. So far, so good. Then he went on to say that why is it, in fact, he wondered, why is it that some Himalayan states like Uttarakhand, regions like Uttarakhand or Sikkim, or uh, Ladakh, why have they been facing so many natural disasters in the recent months, while some other Himalayan states have not? Now, he hinted that possibly this was climate change manipulation by adversaries of India. He did not elaborate on that, but he gave sufficient hints on that. Now, we also know about an interesting program, a project that the US had undertaken some years ago. Now, this was called HARP. Now, HARP is High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program. Now, here basically it's a very detailed and complex scientific maneuver, but basically this involves sending electromagnetic beams into the ionosphere, which heats up the area and creates a rain-like condition. Now, this seems to be just a project, a scientific endeavor, but who was involved in this? It was the US Army and Navy. Along with the US Army and Navy, you had also the Defense Advanced Research Agency of the US. Now, why would a US Army and Navy be involved in a weather related? So, there was obviously some kind of weaponization of climate change here. So, and we of course know about how cloud seeding happens, etc. And there have been experts who've been talking about manipulation or weaponization of climate change by uh, by the means of diverting clouds from one region into another to ensure that that region, which may be an adversarial nation, does not receive adequate rainfall. Conversely, it may push clouds which are seeded artificially into areas which they do not like or which are adversaries and cause floods and deluges. Now, this seems to be a potential climate change weaponization. However, we know that this can become a reality. And because it can become a reality, there is an international convention that prohibits the weaponization of climate change through military or other purposes. How much that holds in the future, we have to see. So, this is one example of the weaponization of climate change that has a direct impact on national security. Let me now uh, pick up on another non conventional factor that we have discussed in the book, and which is food security. Now, when there is a problem of food, scarcity of food, we know the implications, the outcomes, there is unrest, etc., malnutrition, all of that, which are social issues, and how they impact national security is also there in the book. As I said before, let me just concentrate on the weaponization of the how when you have a food issue, when you have a food crisis, which means shortfall of food or skyrocketing food prices. Then, how does this get weaponized in the hands of people? We know that I think it was in 2007, there were massive food riots in I think it was in Mexico. Then in Haiti also you had massive food riots because of shortfall of food prices, and these riots were violent and they were on the streets. And in the case of Haiti, if I remember right, the UN peacekeeping forces had to be called in to control the situation. Now, apparently, the food crisis had been weaponized and used to create a huge violent movement which directly impacted national security. Let us also not forget that the French Revolution had its origin in a food crisis. There was famine, there was inadequate food, and the people thought that the king would help them out by loosening the royal purses. But the king had already used all of it. They were living opulently. There was nothing they could do. And then we had this famous quote from the queen: "If you don't have bread, eat cake." That all of that. And what happened? The French Revolution was triggered by that initially by that food crisis issue, and so and the rest is all history. Now, let's come back to a more recent example, the Arab Spring. The Arab Spring, if I remember right, the American economist Paul Krugman said that the Arab Spring was to a large measure triggered by escalating food prices. And then, of course, various other issues came into the picture. But that was the beginning. Back home, closer to India, let's look at the weaponization internally of a food crisis. The Naxal movement, the Maoist movement, the origins of the Naxal movement and the Maoist movement were, again, the non-availability of food to the marginalized sections of society, or if the availability was there, it was at a high price. The shoddy performance of government officials in handling the crisis, all of that led to the movement. Of course, the movement later on degenerated into terrorism. We don't have to go into that, but that is how it began. One other example of weaponization: the Mizo insurgency movement of the 1960s began following a famine in the region and deep scarcity of food grains. And again, you had a complete uh, mismatch of what the people wanted and what the government was offering. And let us not forget that the insurgency charter actually mentioned food crisis as the most important reason for its rise. It was only later that the food crisis was dropped from the charter and separation from India got added to it. So therefore, how food crisis can be weaponized, we have seen in these cases. Water, again, as Dr. Gupta mentioned, the Indus Waters Treaty is we've kept that in abeyance. That is also weaponization of food, of water. And internally, we have several water disputes between states over river water sharing. We have seen vested elements using the dispute to drum up support among the public, which has often taken violent turns. That also is weaponization of water by sections of people who have ulterior motives. I can go on and on. There is the weaponization of energy. We know what happened today. Of course, we are seeing what's happening with the Russia-Ukraine crisis. The US weaponized energy, has pressured us not to buy energy, not to buy oil from Russia, and then it has imposed tariffs and all of that. That is also weaponization of energy. In 1973, during the Yom Kippur War, the OPEC countries dominated by the Arab nations weaponized energy again. They placed an embargo on oil supplies to the US. Oil prices shot up across the country. We had excellent relations with the Arab nations. We did not even have full diplomatic relations with Israel during that time. And so we appealed to the Arab nations to please have a dual pricing mechanism for us so that we could continue to get our oil requirements from them at the old subsidized rates. The Arab nations flatly refused. And what happened after that? In 1974, our oil import bill doubled as compared to 1973. So that was also an example of weaponization. Now, one other and final example that I would like to give is the weaponization of narratives. Now, narratives has begun to play a very important role in today's era. Social media, instant communication, the internet, etc. Narrative building is as important in warfare, or whether it's traditional warfare or whether it's other forms of warfare. The one who builds a narrative better than the other often wins 50% of the conflict. Operation Sindoor was a good example. Pakistan, although Pakistan was hammered in that, Pakistan built a narrative that India, that it was a victim and India was the aggressor. It went one step further and it displayed a photograph, visuals of a Indian plane going down, and said this was a Rafale that it had shot down. This news was picked up all across the world. Of course, it was not a Rafale. The visual they showed was that of an MiG-21 which had suffered an accident some months ago, and that was the visual. But the narrative was built in such a way that various media organizations took up the narrative, or took up the news, and spread it out all across the world. The Economist carried it actually, saying that several, it is thought that several Indian planes were shot down. The Economist offer, I think, a couple of months an issue of that. So narrative building is important, and if you do not build the narrative correctly, then you suffer even if you are in the right. The weaponization of narrative is also there. If you go back, the Second World War, the US and its allies constructed a narrative with the help of the media and also of Bollywood, of the righteous fight that they were engaged in. Similarly, the Axis powers also constructed a narrative of how right they were in doing what they were. There was a film in Hollywood that actually showed how every Italian, every Japanese, every German was a murderer and a brutal man. Similarly, the US, and that narrative was actually very powerful because uh, Hitler's own generals had once said that this narrative is being believed by everybody else, and our narrative is not being taken seriously. So this weaponization of narrative, I think, is a very important factor. There are other, as I said, there are 15 such factors that we have discussed in the book. Each of them have been either weaponized, as I said earlier in my intervention, or they can be weaponized. I do believe that the prospect of weaponization is posing a very, very serious threat to the national security, and this does not just impact India, but also other countries that have to deal with these matters. I will rest my case here. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I would request everybody to put your questions in the chat box. In the meantime, I'm going to invite Mr. Ajay Shankar to present his views on the book. Quite a bit has been discussed on energy, and so you are our country's leading energy expert. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. And I've forgotten how many minutes? How many minutes?
About 15 minutes, sir.
Okay, thank you. And am I audible?
Yes, you are. And we are visible too.
Now, first of all, let me begin by thanking you for giving me the privilege of being with you today. And my extreme appreciation to the authors of this book. And I really was struck by the title because I was reminded of what happened in the world when I was young. So in the 80s, the Soviet Union was at par with the West in terms of technology, defense, missiles, nuclear weapons. But they hollowed out internally on the economic side. They lost that war or battle or competition by the 70s. And by the late 80s, the Soviet Union just disintegrated. So I think it is very important that the key message of the book spreads and is absorbed that traditional security is only as good as the strength of the country and its economy and its people are. And the book, I'm glad, has identified 15 major challenges because the advantage of using the word security is that automatically we give it a higher priority. So if in the overall system of governance and decision making, what gets identified as an internal security or a silent enemy would get higher priority. And in government, there is this difficult uh, burden for the political leaders as well as for those of us who serve as professional civil servants that the challenges before India, the challenges of development are so vast and so large and so difficult that choosing priorities is never easy. And then finding the financial and administrative resources is never easy. It's always tough. And the way we are in our journey towards becoming a Viksit Bharat, this will remain very difficult for quite some time. So I must again thank the authors for the great service they've rendered by driving home to the wider audience in civil society and government that there are some challenges, security threats, which are not traditional security threats, but they need immediate attention and attention on priority. Now, let me come to the climate change and the energy subject to which Singh said that I should talk about. Now, on climate change, unfortunately, the world has been fighting a losing battle. So global warming was supposed to be restricted to 1.5 degrees. That is unattainable. 2 degrees appears difficult. And with President Trump and the way the West is going, one really doesn't know where we are going. And the UK Prime Minister Starmer has just said yesterday that the global consensus on climate change is far weaker than it used to be. Now, I'm reminded of what the Environment Minister of the first Environment Minister, Mr. Modi's government, said in a Rajya Sabha program where I was with him. And he referred to the famous line of Tagore of Ekla Chalo Re. So he said, we will do what we can and we'll do our best. And that, I think, has guided government policy on climate change. So our Prime Minister has been very forward-looking, and the goal of 500 GW fossil fuel-free capacity by 2030, 32, net zero by 2070, they're all very forward-looking and ambitious goals. But within India, there has been this tension, or I would say contradiction in our thought processes. So our earlier position used to be, and rightfully so, that development is our foremost priority, and we fought for that common but differentiated responsibility principle in the international system. And we kept saying that the West has caused the problem and they should not, ask us to do things which they think should be done because they've caused the problem. And our traditional position was that we should get finance, technology, and that has remained a standard part of the narrative around climate justice. But I refer to this Ekla Chalo principle because the fact of the matter is that the way the world is, I do not see money coming to India which other than on commercial terms for whatever needs to be done on climate change. I also do not see technology being transferred in some manner which is a public good because the argument in the West is right that technology is a proprietary item of firms who have developed technology. So I think what we are doing in India is the right thing, that we are doing what we can do on our own and we are doing much better than is widely appreciated. Now, what we do is very important because, as was pointed out earlier, that the glaciers are melting and so on and so forth. So the impact of climate change would be extreme on us and maybe much earlier than in other parts of the world. The other important issue is that given the fact that we are the largest population in the world and we are at a very early level of development and of per capita consumption, what we do really matters to the global battle on climate change because the West has reached somewhere. So, in fact, if I were to make a very stronger statement, I would say that the only area where what we do matters to mankind and to the world is on climate change. Because if we follow the traditional path of the US, that kind of energy intensive, fossil fuel intensive consumption and development, there is no way mankind can survive the challenge of climate change. But if we do things right, then there is some hope. I'm not saying mankind will survive if only we do the right things and the US doesn't do anything, or China doesn't do anything, but there is hope. And what we do will be an example for the other developing countries that there is an alternative path for development, which need not use fossil fuels and which need not add to global warming. And I think we are on that trajectory, and the leadership on the hydrogen mission, the attempt to reach the global frontiers in the hard to abate sectors, in the building on the success of renewable energy and storage. So I mean, we can look forward actually to a position where our electricity system becomes free of fossil fuels much earlier than planned and expected. And on the hard to abate sectors, we start succeeding as the same pace that the advanced economies are succeeding because we have the potential to leapfrog and be at par with them because they haven't achieved very much as yet. So I think on climate change, we are very well positioned. And the consensus in the elite that we can become net zero and that we can net zero well before 270 is required. And the traditional mindset that the problem of the West, they must act and we'll act later, needs to be abandoned. Fortunately, the Prime Minister does not believe in that, and his formulations are not on that. In G20, he took a leadership position. In Glasgow, he took a leadership position. But my sense is that the dominant policy elite in establishment is a bit behind. In fact, my personal view is that if we were to aim to become net zero by 2047, the year we'll become Vikasit and the 100th year of our independence, we may well succeed. But even if we don't succeed, the effort will do us a lot of good. And the point that is worth noting is that Europe has introduced the carbon border adjustment mechanism, where their consumption will also take into account the carbon content and the carbon emissions. Now, I believe that as India, as a country, we should welcome it. We should have an industrial policy which supports Indian industry to achieve the CBM standards. If we do that, we can leapfrog into a green manufacturing, globally competitive economy. And theoretically, we have a late mover's advantage. Because you take China, a energy intensive, fossil fuel intensive manufacturing plant cannot be retrofitted. It has to be closed down and a new one built. So they have to close an existing plant and build a new one to become CBM compliant. We can become CBN compliant with new investment because we don't have excess capacity. We are in an early stage of industrialization. So we can, if we get our policy act together, see that we meet CBM requirements across the board and we finally achieve the success in manufactured exports which have eluded us. But this would need the kind of leadership which we are seeing, but a greater buy-in in the elite of the country that we can and should leapfrog and become green manufacturers rather than take the traditional view that CBAM is a non-tariff barrier, it's against free trade, it's an imperialist instrument. Now, those are, in my view, dated mindsets which we need to outgrow and be confident that we will be CBM compliant and will be the most CBM compliant manufacturing nation in the world. I will take a few more minutes. I think I have a few more minutes. I'll move on from this, but on this, I'll make one other point that the cost of medication is high, but is manageable, affordable. The cost of adaptation is unaffordable because it rises exponentially with global warming. So there is no way India or other developing countries can find the resources for adaptation if the world doesn't succeed on mitigation. And the fact of the matter is the rich countries unfortunately feel poor, and I have very little hope from them of actually providing any money which is other than commercial money for either mitigation or adaptation. I will make one other point in the 2-3 minutes I have, which is on water. Now, according to me, we are like in the Titanic, and the iceberg which will hit us much before global warming will hit us is water. Because we are mining our groundwater, we will run out of groundwater, the Himalayas would melt, and Punjab anyway today consumes more water in rice production than the total availability of water from rainfall and the melt of the glaciers in Punjab. So just as we mine gold and run out of gold, we'll mine water and run out of it. And water has again very difficult to find short-term solutions to water shortage. And I think water use efficiency, change in cropping pattern, recycling of water, etc., are not getting the priority and the attention they deserve. So I will just look at the whole pecking order of perceptions. The Energy Ministry seems as more important than water. Bureau of Energy Efficiency is very active, but we don't have a Bureau of Water Use Efficiency. And somehow the political class is not yet persuaded that there is a crisis which needs immediate attention and that cropping patterns have to change if we are to survive. Farmers have to use water more efficiently, use drip irrigation, stop flooding fields, and so on and so forth. These are issues which need to be brought center stage, and I hope the message of security would get this more attention than it has been getting. And one last comment, the phrase weaponization was used. Now, the fact is that every weakness that is extreme in our society, or a problem that is extreme, it's a potential tinderbox. So natural forces can get it to explode or generate great unrest, and those who don't like us or want to hurt us, they'd only be rational and intelligent if they tried to find a weak spot and do the best they could to hurt us. So I think for every reason, in terms of our own national interest, we should identify the challenges which can become security challenges and give them more priority, more resources, and more attention. And finally, I would say that when you get down to it, we usually discover that the challenge is not as difficult as we thought it would be, and tackling it intelligently turns out to be more feasible and affordable. And I'll end with the example of when I was a child, the Green Revolution. And Mrs. Gandhi said, we will not go on our knees before the Americans. And lo and behold, we had a Green Revolution and we were self-sufficient in food grains. And India of 69 68 was far weaker than the India of 25. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I totally agree with you. Means I was also thinking throughout the presentation of the book while I was running through the pages that as in a body, your immunity goes down. The vulnerabilities, economic and social vulnerabilities, weaken the immunity system, and then anything is possible. So one has to really solidify and strengthen the immunity and not let the immunity come down. And therein, I think mending the fences is very important. The point you made, if we were vulnerable on food and PL480 was our support, we had to get out of it. Thank you so much. Let me now invite Professor Deshpande to share his thoughts. Professor, over to you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Charan Singh ji. It is really a great opportunity for me. I hope I'm audible.
Yes,
Am
you
I?
are.
Yes,
Yes,
you are
yes.
audible, loud and clear. Loud and clear.
Okay. This is a great opportunity to listen to both authors, Arvind Gupta and Rajesh Singh. They have crystal clear made it the entire scenario in front of us. And the threat is real. The threat is real, even though it is in the distant future. But then we cannot be complacent. And this particular concept of being complacent is quite an important. We were complacent. 1947, 48, as soon as we got our independence, we knew our food economy is in shambles. Till 64, 65, we were complacent. And then we got up. We are complacent even now about our water resources. We're complacent about our climate change impact, either mitigation or adaptation processes. Sometime back, there was a government program to make state-wise report on how do we deal with the impact of climate change. Anyway, the reports are stacked as usual. Initially, and I would keep my points very few, not many, for one reason that I'm a last entrant and I haven't gone through the book because the book was not available so quickly. But then I'm thankful to Charan Singh sir because he has made it to read me and also listen to both of you on YouTube. I heard you very patiently, and this is second time I'm hearing you. True that there are enemies which are silent, but then I would come to that non-traditional little later. These are traditional enemies. We recognize them now. We come to the first point, that is, what is the economic and social impact of all these silent enemies and how weaponization takes place. So the first point I would like to make is affluence. An unending pursuit of affluence brings in a large number of enemies, and this is true of Punjab, this is true of India, this is true of America, this is true of Britain. The long-ending pursuit of affluence, either through the use of natural resources or through use of resources, or because of the arrogance of technology that we can deal with any situation. Therefore, the kind of affluence brings in insecurity. The moment a person becomes rich in a village, the insecurity begins in. Similarly, the higher the affluence, the higher will be insecurity and higher will be the impact on the economy. Now, as far as economy is concerned, or as far as people are concerned, we treat them as homogeneous commodity. I emphasize the word commodity, for the reason that a large part of these people are extremely vulnerable, whereas some part of these people or these regions or these nations are possible, they have it in their grip to deal with the exigencies, especially in climate change or anything. Now here I really appreciate Rajesh Singh sir's 15 factors. If it would have been very nice if you had presented a PPT with 15 factors listed, it would have been very easy for me to get into the economics of it. But then, getting into the economics of the entire thing, I will summarize it in one sentence. The devil takes the hindmost. Any time any disaster happens, either due to climate change, due to water resources, due to energy resources, due to anything that you have listed it out, possibly, each one of them impact heavily and bleedingly on the hindmost, that is the bottom of the people or the weaker countries. The second thing is fall from a short height and fall from a tall height. The problem is that Punjab, now it had reached a peak. People thought that we don't need anything. And then suddenly it started collapsing. Collapsing not because in the GSDP at all. GSDP collapse is one thing, but then collapsing in morale. The kind of drug menace in Punjab is a talk of the day. Each one of us are talking about it. But then drug menace did not stop in Punjab alone. The moment affluence comes in Bangalore, most of the drugs caught by the police are from the field of electrical or this IT engineers. What is that? That's exactly the affluence brings insecurity in terms of different. And why do they take the drugs? The kind of insecurity, psychological insecurity they have everything, but they don't have affection, they don't have family, they feel totally insecure. And that kind of insecurity in these 15 factors one can list out. The almost the last point that I would like to make is that climate change, cyber insecurity, the groundwater you have stated, most of these are made with our policies. I was involved with the policies, and I can tell you that we for years together we fooled. Fortunately, planning commission was closed, and it was closed not. It was signed by Modi ji. It was signed by the new prime minister, but the document of closure of it was ready on the table of Dr. Manmohan Singh well before the elections were declared. Unfortunately, elections were declared, and the document had to be signed by Modi only. The one-man commission, which was appointed on the planning commission, it stated very clearly that this is a toothless body. And I participated in 9th plan, 10th plan, 11th plan, and 12th plan in the working group. Some working groups I headed. I find that we are working on the working group, and working group is the feed of the plan document. You are bureaucrats, you know it well. The plan document has to get the working groups decisions first, and then that enters into the plan document. I know the approach was finalized when the working group results were not out. We have not finalized the working group paper. Now, this not only once, quite a few times, which means in the policy, we are yet to, the example which I gave you, that Government of India has prepared across the states climate change, meeting the climate change impact and mitigation and adaptation policy. Karnataka, I worked on it, and we have prepared a document. The thing is that its impact across the countries and across India will be differential, and the weaker or those which are more vulnerable are likely to get highest hit. These vulnerables are even today vulnerable. Climatically, they are vulnerable, and therefore the document that the book that you have brought in is the uh, highest needed today in order to think for 10 or 20 years ahead. And this thinking material must be prepared on the line, so that this is only the warning bell. What you are given is a warning bell. There must be a chapter where you would have indicated what needs to be done, but then the next phase is to how do we do it. And the likely economic impact of this is going to be significantly high. And as I told you earlier, that the impact does not stay only economic. it takes the hindmost, which means there will be a highest inequality. The highest inequality generates the highest social distress. Highest social distress generates the kind of weaponization of the people. These people will get weaponized, and that's what happens in many places. Naxalism is emergence of Naxalism is there. Sir, I'm really grateful to have given me a chance to talk about it, and as you could feel, all of you could feel that I was a little. I hope in between the voice has not gone. You are hearing me?
Yeah, we can hear you. We
Okay,
can
okay.
hear you.
Because I see some of the comments that speaker Cyrus something and all. In any case, I got this chance to talk about as far as climate change and security is concerned. Security is concerned. I was a student of Indian Military Academy, and then I learned some of the theoretical lessons. Though I did not get into the army for reasons best known to me. The second thing is my thesis was to check the long term, that is 100 years of weather cycles, how the weather cycles change and how they have changed across the four states, that is Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, Andhra and Maharashtra, ac- across the districts, and which is the vulnerable area and what needs to be done on these vulnerable areas. My book on the rainfed areas uh, in the country is out by it is published by NABARD. The the uh, so also disaster management in India. Have we failed the people? This is a LS Venkataraman memorial lecture, which is also published. Both the things argue very clearly that we are unprepared. Warnings are sounded by people like you, like Arvind Gupta incessantly worked and sounded a loud warning. Rajesh Singh has brought out those 15 factors which are important, and then we only have to work on them and how to deal with them, and that work is for the future. Otherwise the economies in the world are likely to collapse one after another. Thank you, sir. Thank you for this chance of talking to you all, and to the illustrious audience I must thank Charan Singh ji. He's a good senior friend whom I always admire for his patience and for his very strictly centrist and strictly truthful view. Thank you.
So I think, thank you so much, Professor Deshpande. Mr. Rajesh, if I understand, the 15 points that you are referring are the 15 chapters of the book.
That's correct.
Am I right? Yeah.
That's correct.
So the war of narratives, hard selling soft power, energy, health, battle for water, less food, geoeconomics games, ensuring holistic education, the danger from non-state actors, then in tune with technology, dealing with maritime, matrix, shadow of organized crime, nobody lives if nature dies, demography is a double-edged sword, and global warming is not cool. Those are the 15 chapters,
Yes.
and that's, I think, the 15 points that you made.
Points. Yes.
So we have had an excellent discussion. Each one of you have, the discussants have made their point, the authors have made their own point. I totally agree. Within the country, one has to be prepared. The old time warfare with the stone, then with the sword, then with a cannon, gun and a cannon, and then with fighter planes and naval ships and submarines. It has changed over time. A day has come when you don't even know, within your own country, somebody starts knocking at your door without your knowledge. Arab Spring happened quite a few years ago, nearly 2 decades ago. But in our neighborhood, things have happened in the last 6 months. These are all enemies within and hidden enemies, and we never knew that something like this can happen. So I think the style of warfare has changed tremendously, and the very fact that the way you have listed them down, yeah, and at least put it in the forefront, flag those issues so that now And coming from a person who's been in the National Security Advisory Council gives a very good feeling that how much wider the canvas has to be and what all can be done now. This book, today's discussion, simply reminds me of a very simple example of a red blood cell and a white blood cell. You have to be constantly prepared, and you have to be strong, and you have to be constantly prepared, is what I am reminded of. And if I have read the history correctly and I remember it correctly, there was a time when 25% of the Indian people, the king, would ensure that defense readiness, defense equipment, defense training, about 25% of the people were Kshatriyas, and only then we could become the golden sparrow of the world and maintain that status of a golden sparrow of the world. Otherwise, there were enough people even then who were out and out to come and eat us up. Some succeeded, and now we have recovered our feet. I think you're bringing us back to that thought. There are a couple of questions in the chat box. We are starting the day, and I know each one is busy. I'm going to invite Dr. Monica Mangla, who's a government official, and I've known her for many years. She has a question. It's in the chat box. But I would like to invite Monica, if you're around, do you want to ask your own question? Monica?
Yes, sir, I'm here. So my
Yeah.
question is pertaining to the interaction between the investments and the security. So right now I'm working in the Department of Commerce and working on the investment chapter in the FTA. So I have observed that Indian side is very cautious when it comes to giving policy space to foreign investor. The very simple policy space like the national treatment, that any foreigner, any foreign investor who comes, set up enterprises in India, it's a FDI, and then we just promise them that we won't treat you differently from our domestic investors. Even in the non services, in the manufacturing space, we are so afraid of giving the policy space to the foreign investor. So I want to understand, is there any security angle? What security lapse can possibly happen if, say, company or China, if China is not allowed, there is PN3. So even if a Chinese company come and set up a garments factory in India, what kind of security threat it can pose?
Ajay Shankar, sir, would you like to ask your question now?
I can no, I want to answer her question. If you're taking others, all right. Otherwise, I want to say a couple of things.
No, I think the authors and you and Professor Deshpande, howsoever you want to handle, she is working in the government and she's placed an important thought before all of
That's why I
you.
raised my
Yeah.
hand that I
Yeah.
also want to say something on it, but after the authors.
After the author. Sir, over to you, Dr. Arvind Gupta.
So that's a very good question, and also it's a dilemma. See, money is not colorless. Money has color. Where is the money coming from? What purposes it is going for? And what is the end game and objective? All these matter. So, money coming from a Chinese investor is seen with suspicion because of the very difficult relationship that we have with China. And we have seen China using the Belt and Road Initiative as a channel, as a conduit for investing in so many countries, almost I think 150 countries or something like that, has bought a lot of influence. And the nature of investment is also questionable. In fact, in Sri Lanka, where the Chinese investment has created a debt trap, and this has happened in many countries. And you know what happened in Sri Lanka then? They could not pay back their debt, and they had to give Hambantota port on 99-year lease to the Chinese. And this has happened right in our backyard. Similarly, the Chinese investment in Myanmar, particularly in their various minerals and their ports, etc., is not innocent. So what I'm trying to say is that investment is not innocent. So that is why I think the policymakers, particularly those who are taking decisions in the Ministry of Commerce, Department of Industrial Development, other ministries and so on, they will, if they are sensitized to the security aspects of investment, then they would be careful. That is why due diligence is very often done, and that often requires taking on board the views of the National Security Council Secretariat or the Home Ministry, etc., when we go into certain kinds of investments. So I hope I have clarified essentially that investment is not colorless or neutral.
Totally agree with you, sir. And not only colorless, even within a family, friends, relatives, and many times I say, as a financial institution, money has a color and it's always closely monitored. Okay. Now, over to you, Mr. Rajesh Singh. Do you want to add something?
Not really, because this is something that people who have worked in the government can best answer. As a layman, I can only say, repeat a saying, a popular saying in Hindi, which is "Doodh ka jala chhaj bhi fukar pita hai." In English, it would be "once bitten, twice shy." I think that would explain our responses to investments from the Chinese side, investment proposals from the Chinese side, even if it is in apparently harmful sectors such as uh, garments or anything else. That is what I would like to say.
Thank you. Over to you, Dr. Ajay Shankarji. Over to you, sir. Would you like to, you wanted
I
to clarify?
wanted to make a few points. I wanted to make a few points. And this issue is now very important because the world as we understood the world of free markets, globalized, settled rules of trade for business has been destroyed by President Trump. And we have seen it in the last 6, 8 months. So I think we need to go back to the drawing board and think afresh. The following points for consideration. First of all, if we import from China, it is better that the same thing is made in India because some jobs will get created in India and some capacity creation would happen in terms of management and workforce. So this business that Chinese should not make in India but will import from India is conceptually flawed. The second point, that China has shown that it can weaponize its monopoly power or oligopoly power in something like rare or critical minerals. Now, we therefore need to do a hard look at where our vulnerabilities are vis-a-vis China in terms of trade. And we have to create that capacity in India. Now, the only reason we have not done it because we've left it to market forces, and the Chinese are the cheapest producers of everything in the world. So, you want to take a very theoretical economic view, then we have rising demand, they have spare capacity, surplus capacity that is cheap. So, the best economic equilibrium is that they provide us all that we need and we produce nothing because whatever we produce will be more expensive. So, I think a hard headed economic nationalism view is required that we will spend more if necessary, but we will create our domestic capacities. And anything where we are vulnerable or where is an internal security threat or problem, we will become self reliant. Now, take pharmaceuticals. Our entire global exports are dependent on imports from China. So I think the entire renewable energy program of solar is dependent on imports from China. So it makes good sense for us to become self-reliant in making solar panels, even if it is more expensive. Because there's no way we can make anything today which is new, which will be as cheap as the Chinese are making it. So I think we need to take a hard political decision that the Indian consumer will pay more, the Indian government will pay more, but we will learn how to make things. Otherwise, I think we may as well choose to become a client state of China. I mean, I don't see, I would like to put it very hard, strong, because if we can't make things and our economy is completely dependent on China, then we may as well forget about strategic autonomy vis-a-vis China. I remember a debate at the time of Galwan in a channel with a senior journalist who was seriously arguing on behalf of Indian business that taking care of the border is a problem of the army and the defense forces. Why should it affect trade? Why should it hurt Indian business? And this argument went on for 10 minutes. And she was not persuaded, nor was I. So I want to make a very strong case for de novo examination of economic nationalism, what it means in the new Trumpian world, and what we need to do, and to draw up a game plan which is patient, systematic, and without too much media headlines, because whatever we talk about in the media is obviously taken into account by the other side, or by everybody. Thank you.
Professor Deshpande, you want to add something? Professor Deshpande, do you want to add something? Would you like to add something? Nothing. Okay. I think then we are just about to close. Yeah. Monica, I think they have answered your question. Professor
Yes.
Deshpande has a technical snag. I have myself a feeling. I was working on this textiles for some time, and sir, I was so sad when I was told that H&M, M&S, they have overtaken the Indian garment industry so badly that our tailors have forgotten how to stitch Indians type of clothes. All that our tailors do, and generally in major metropolitans and bigger cities, is only make alterations to dresses bought which have been designed by somebody sitting abroad on a fabric manufactured abroad, and in India these are just simply imported and then we wear them. So I was in that sense worried what is going to happen. In any case, I think it's a very important issue which she has raised, and I'll look for if we can bring in a discussion on FTAs from various aspects. With that, we are at 12:30, time to close. I want to once again thank the authors, Dr. Gupta and Rajesh Singh, for having come and shared the book with us. I want to thank both the discussants, Mr. Ajay Shankar and Professor Deshpande, for sharing their thoughts, and the participants who have asked so many questions and really enriched the discussion. As we have run short of time, I know there are other questions in the chat box. I've seen a few hands raised, but because we have run badly out of time, I apologize. The recording of today's discussion will be available by noon tomorrow on EGROW website. Next Friday, we are going to have a discussion on the Assam economy and how the Assam economy has progressed over the years, over the last 15 to 20 years. We are going to discuss that. I would like to invite you to come and participate in the discussion. Thank you very much once again.
Thank
Wishing you a
you.
great day ahead and a great weekend. Thank you.
Thank you, Charan Singh ji. Thank you, EGROW. Thank you for inviting us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.